I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and fly the Razor 125 now, and this is new from iFlight. So I have my antenna sticking out the top there. Maybe it'll do a little bit better for reception, and I have my antennas coming out the top little hole right there. But it looks like a good looking quad. It does remind me a lot of the BabyhawkR, so kind of excited about this one. Got some nice 25-40 props on there, and I'm expecting good performance out of this quad. So we'll see what it does line of sight. Then we'll do some FPV. Seems pretty punchy on the throttle. Actually nice and responsive. And I've got my rate set to about 70, so it's gonna be flying pretty good, but not super crazy. Fill a punch out real quick. Man, it gets small really fast. If it wasn't so wet on the ground today, I would probably do a little more acro flips, but I'm a little bit nervous with all this water on the ground. So let's go ahead and put it down before I short it out in the grass or in the mud puddles. And let's do some FPV. Here we go, guys. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun flying this little guy out in the field. And, you know, I've talked to you guys about brushless micro before, and kind of where my sweet spot is for these size quads, battery and prop size, also motor size. In the last year, I've really had a lot of good experience with 1106 motors and 2.5-inch props. And iFlight came up with the Razor, the X125 2-inch model, and it seems like it's kind of a Babyhawk competitor, because it sure looks a lot like the Babyhawk, but it's got this cool TPU style 3D printed canopy on the top of it with a little kind of shark fin off the back of it, and some fins on the two sides there sticking out. But aside from the pretty durable kind of football helmet style canopy, you have quite a few good things on this quad, and it accepts a variety of receivers. But one of the drawbacks, and let's go ahead and get this con out of the way, I think versus the BabyhawkR, and I wouldn't call this a BabyhawkR killer for a few reasons, but there are some good points about this quad that I want to share with you versus the Babyhawk, because I think a lot of people are comparing this one to the Emax Babyhawk. So right away, I'm going to say that the camera that they used on this one, iFlight, you probably should have used either a Foxeer Aero Micro on this Razor, or you should have used the RunCam Micro. It would have been a much cleaner image and a much better signal with another VTX on here besides this dipole all-in-one. So I'm not a fan, not a huge fan of these AIO cameras. They're kind of 2016, and 2 years later, everyone on brushless micros is using the small RunCam and either Foxeer or the Frsky clone. So with that out of the way, I can talk about the good stuff. What I liked about it mostly was the flight characteristic. It didn't need a whole lot of tuning right out of beta flight, and it flew extremely well. And I actually think this is probably going to be a more optimal setup as far as arm size. So iFlight came right out of the bat, right off the website, having the correct arms on here for 2.5-inch. Now this one is also upgradable, so you can run the 2.5-inch arms on this one, which makes this one a little more versatile. But I feel like this is what I want to do with the BabyhawkR. I want this to be a 2.5-inch quad, because I think it'll fly smoother, and it'll fly nice and a little more floaty for big field freestyle on 3 and 4S, and I think that's what the BabyhawkR needs. 2.2-inch props make it actually really fast and kind of nuts to fly, and I like that style. I like to fly fast and low and just take chances through small gaps, and you can really do that with 2-inch. So this is what it is for now, but awesome quad, by the way, one of my favorites. But the iFlight Razor, it just in a way it flew smoother, and since I had been flying the R so much, I was kind of ready to just rip this one. And once I got out in the field and flying it, I was just kind of enjoying the smooth flying characteristics of this 2.5 setup. So I think this one has an audience and a customer base of people that are looking for something that flies smooth and can be aggressive right out of the box. If you want to up your rates to something like 80, you can get it to perform a lot quicker and turn on a dime. It didn't have a whole lot of flutter and vibration at the top end, and it performs pretty well. So I don't have a whole lot of complaints about the flight characteristics of the X125. Now also, let's talk about the ESCs on here. The ESCs are 4-in-1 BL Heli 10 amp ESCs, so I was getting away with running a 3S on here, and I really wanted to run 3S mainly because I have iPower 1106 motors on here, so I think they can handle 3S. It's 6,000 kV with a 10 amp 4-in-1. You're kind of pushing it with 3S, but you do have a burst up to about 15 amp on this ESC setup. And riding on top of the motors, they have gem fan props on here, which do really well. And they're 2540 tri-blade props. I like these clear ones a lot. It also came with a set of black in the box. Now you guys will also notice that I brought my receiver wires back here out in the very back, kind of separated those from the antenna. Originally when I got this, it had the VTX dipole here coming off the back of the camera, tucked underneath this canopy. And you know, that's pretty nice for keeping it protected. You're not going to destroy this camera inside this TPU frame, which is really a nice durability factor. But one of the things that I wanted to do was have better reception, because I knew I wasn't going to be really crashing it too much as compared to somebody new. But so I went ahead and punched a hole in the top with my soldering iron, just so that I could get a little better reception with this. And I think it did pretty good out in the field and up. Probably had a little bit of issues around the trees, but let me just go ahead and pop this little bit of hot glue off here so I can get the top off for you. 4 bolts on the bottom hold the canopy on. And by the way, look at this frame on the bottom. This is pretty high quality carbon fiber. It also has beveled edges. I believe this is definitely some 3K carbon fiber for this bottom plate. Now the bottom plate is also a unibody, guys, so it's different than the BabyhawkR. If you break this arm, which you're likely not to, because it's nice and thick, you're going to have to replace the whole bottom frame. But I think iFlight stuff is pretty affordable. So you're looking at the inside of the quad now, and you can see that the receiver that I have on here, they included this kind of servo lead here, just plug it in to the mini receiver. And normally I wouldn't do that. I would just take these wires and go straight into the receiver. And I think that would save it just a little more space, because this could tuck down on top of the flight controller a little easier. And back here I have actually LEDs, which kind of light up the back of the TPU canopy. And you have a buzzer on there, which is great. So they have everything on here that most of us want. So I think iFlight is they're really coming a long way with listening to customers and giving us what we want. Especially, this is actually a pretty decent, this is a good quad. I would stand behind this one as far as flight characteristics, what's on here, and I'm just going to talk about a few updates that maybe they could do for the version 2. And I've already mentioned the camera, so that's one of them. The next thing might be bigger 4-in-1 ESC stack, so that we can handle 4S battery on 2.5 inch, because there's a lot of guys out there that want to run 4S on it, and with 10 amp ESCs on here, even a burst up to 15, I would not run 4S on this. You're going to fry something for sure. But the flight controller on here is probably the secret sauce to why this one flies so well right out of the box and doesn't have a whole lot of vibes, because this is actually an F3 flight controller on here, running Betaflight and already set up for Betaflight OSD. Now I do have OSD cables coming off the back of this camera. There's 4 wires coming off the back of the camera and the VTX over here to the flight controller. But my problem in my demo was that I got new goggles, and for some reason there's a strange thing with my SkyZone O2s. If I don't go to the OSD setting in the Betaflight app and I put it on NTSC, for some reason my OSD doesn't show up on my quads, and I just figured that out a few days ago. But once I do that, I take it off auto and I put it on NTSC, my OSD shows up. Very strange, but this one does have OSD, and your goggles are probably going to display it, unlike mine did for the first few batteries I flew this. But pretty easy to fly right out of the gate on my first batteries, and it was not a hard quad to fly. It was actually quite enjoyable. Now battery sizes, you guys can run this on 2S and fly and have a smooth, nice, easy flyer. If you want to go all the way up to like an 850 milliamp, these 1106s can lift an 850 milliamp 2S battery, no problem. You have plenty of room on here to run a little larger battery. If you want a kind of a cruiser and you want longer flight time, above 5 minutes. Now if you want max power and under 5 minute flight time, put a 3S 550 on there, or 500 milliamp, and you're going to get a little better performance and a little more punch out, just a little less flight time, maybe in the 3 to 4 minute range on that battery setup. And what's also pretty cool about this one is that iFlight does offer a package B, they call it, and this is an RTF package which comes with a FlySky transmitter, and it does have a little computer screen on it. You guys can go in there and you can add new models on it. I've had a lot of guys that I've known just get into FPV racing and they start out on FlySky. They're not the greatest gimbals, they're not super smooth like a Taranis, but it is probably about maybe a $30 transmitter, $40 at the most some places, and it's configurable. So that is an option for guys that don't want to do a lot of radio programming. It should be already set up coming from iFlight, so that's an option that they have on their website. And the bind and fly version right now I think is like $109, so for what you get here, it's actually a pretty good value. So 2.5 inch quad, around $100, and kind of has that 5-inch feel. Again, I wish they had something like this when I first started FPV with a ZMR 250, and it was a giant nightmare. I could go into that story, but that's a long, terrible story. But anyway, guys, I'm impressed with the work that you guys have done on this quad, and just a few suggestions for the version 2 of it. I think you will sell a bunch of them with a little better camera on here, but it is what it is. You can upgrade it because I believe you can fit a run cam inside this, because it has sort of a pretty big mount inside here, so you've got room side to side, so you should be able to fit some type of run cam TPU mount in this quad and get a little better resolution on your camera display. But I think it's a cool quad and an alternative for people who want something a little bit cheaper than the BabyhawkR, because in my book it flies probably about the same, maybe a little bit smoother right out of the box without a lot of tuning. So pretty cool quad. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me on the channel. And by the way, join up on the Quad Club. I have a new Quad Club on my website. You might be able to find stuff like this for super cheap if I don't decide to keep it for my personal collection. So check that out on dronecamps.com. I think it's like $1 to join it, and you also get some free tech support. So if you're new, check that out. And also for 2018, check it out in the link below. We're back on Patreon, so $1 will also get you entered into the Quad Club and get you the password. So thanks again for hanging out with me, guys. I'm Justin Davis, and this has been the iFlight X125